In 1977, NASA had to make a decision. If you could only save 116 images, the final record of everything humanity ever was, what would you choose? A child laughing, a forest at sunrise, a city at night. They called it the Golden Record. They attached it to 2 spacecraft, and they launched it into the dark. Right now, those records have left our solar system completely. They're out there, spinning through interstellar space, in total silence, in total darkness, carrying the only copy of us that might survive after everything else is gone. And when I think about that, really think about it, I don't feel inspired. I feel afraid. This is about why. Space has never been the gleaming frontier that science fiction promised us. The early astronaut programs were haunted by something they called space madness, the theory that a human mind plunged into the infinite would simply break. And looking at what we know now, that fear wasn't irrational. Without a spacesuit, you'd be unconscious in under 15 seconds, dead in 90. But the physical danger isn't what gets me. It is the psychological reality of being surrounded by something that doesn't know you exist, doesn't care, has no opinion about you whatsoever. The movies understood this before the science did. 2001, A Space Odyssey opens with clean corridors and orderly meals and artificial gravity, a comforting fantasy of space as something manageable. Then it slowly peels that away. The deeper you go, the more you realize the tidiness was always a lie. A thin membrane stretched over something incomprehensible. Kubrick didn't show you a monster. He showed you a door and left it open. Solaris takes a different approach entirely. Instead of vastness, it gives you intimacy. A psychologist sent to a space station where the crew has been driven mad, not by aliens, but by their own unresolved memories. Space in Solaris isn't the threat. We are. We carry our damage with us into the dark. And in the silence, it gets louder. There is a game called Outer Wilds. And I don't think any piece of media has made me feel the weight of a single moment as powerfully as this game did. The setup is simple. You are an alien explorer with a rickety spaceship, and you die. A lot. Every time you die, you wake up at the beginning of a 22-minute time loop at first. This feels like freedom. I started throwing myself into danger without hesitation. Fly into a sun. Sure, it resets anyway. Skip the conversations. Obviously. Why would I waste time roasting a marshmallow when nothing here is permanent? But then Outer Wilds does something I didn't expect. At the end of each loop, when your life flashes before your eyes, it shows you every moment you collected. And the ones that stood out weren't the dramatic ones. It was watching a sunrise I'd almost skipped. It was a conversation I'd rushed through. It was the marshmallow I didn't bother with because what was the point? Late in the game. I made a mistake. My ship drifted out of reach. I watched it get smaller and smaller until it was just a point of light, and then nothing. And I knew this loop was going to end the way all the worst ones do. Not quickly, just waiting, oxygen counting down, the void all around me, and floating there, I remembered something. In 1957, the first living creature to orbit Earth was a dog named Laika. She was strapped into a metal capsule. The mission was designed to be one way. They assumed she'd run out of oxygen instead. The craft overheated. The last words she likely ever heard were a Soviet scientist saying, "Please forgive us." Her heart rate tripled in those final moments. She was terrified. Did she understand enough to feel betrayed? There is a photo of a dog on the Golden Record, meant to represent the loyalty of our canine companions. Please forgive us, Laika. There is a pattern I keep noticing across very different stories about space. Silent running, high life, Under a Star called Sunday, 3 completely different films and games, all with one thing in common. A character on a doomed vessel who keeps tending to their plants. In Silent Running, the plants are the last green things left from a barren earth, a final record of nature. In High Life, their survival. Food for a father and his infant daughter drifting toward a black hole. In Under a Star called Sunday, a lone cosmonaut checks for bugs in the leaves, checks the moisture of the soil, checks the dust, and hums to them when no one is watching. They all know the end is coming. There is no rescue, no escape. The trajectory is unchanging. And still, they water the plants. I used to think that was the tragedy. Now, I think it is the point. Because the question isn't whether something lasts. The question is whether it mattered while it was here. The child raised on a doomed ship only knows Earth from corrupted images on a hard drive. But she knows her father. She knows her father. She knows she is loved. Does a moment need to be permanent to be real? Let me show you something that took me a while to fully process. You know that model of the solar system from school? Planets neatly lined up in a row. That is not what space looks like. Even the version that shows them further apart, still not close. The real picture looks like almost nothing. One pale blue dot beneath Saturn's rings. In an ocean of black. That is Earth. That is everything. We've been sending radio signals into space for over a century now. The furthest ones have traveled around 300 trillion kilometers. Want to see how far that is on a map of the galaxy? It is a dot smaller than a pixel. And most of those signals, old television, dramas, radio shows, advertisements, have probably already degraded into static, or messages to the universe, are blurring into meaningless noise before they even get anywhere. Which, honestly, might be fine. There is a theory called the dark forest hypothesis. The idea is this: the reason space seems so empty isn't because life is rare. It is because any civilization that makes too much noise gets found. And found means eliminated. Every species that survives learns to go quiet. We've been screaming into the dark for 100 years. Maybe the most terrifying thing isn't a universe full of hostile life. Maybe it is what Arthur C. Clarke said: two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe, or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. Here is something I find both comforting and deeply unsettling at the same time. Earth is protected in ways that feel almost absurdly specific. The solar wind creates a bubble around us, shielding Earth from interstellar radiation. Jupiter, because of its enormous gravity, acts like a catcher's mitt for asteroids that would otherwise hit us. Our magnetic field extends tens of thousands of kilometers into space, deflecting charged particles that would strip away our atmosphere. Mars and Venus don't have that. Look how they turned out. Jupiter's great red spot, that little dot you see on images of the planet, is a storm larger than Earth itself. Temperatures inside it reach over 1,300 degrees Celsius. Uranus and Neptune spin so far from the sun that their atmospheres fall hundreds of degrees below freezing. And beyond our solar system, there are likely billions of planets, but we have no idea how many of them got lucky the way we did. We assume life must exist elsewhere because we exist, but that logic only works if we understand how we got here. And we don't, not yet. Let me be real with you for a second. In roughly 4 to 5 billion years, our sun will expand into a red giant and almost certainly swallow the Earth. Even if that doesn't happen, the sun will eventually die. Every star will eventually die. In about 4.5 billion years, the Milky Way will collide with the Andromeda Galaxy. Billions of stars flung into the void. And in the very, very long run, the universe itself is drifting toward a state of maximum entropy. Everything spreading out. Everything cooling down. Everything going dark. So what is the point of any of it? If nothing lasts, why save 116 photographs? Why launch a record into interstellar space? Why water the plants on a ship that is heading toward the sun? I keep coming back to one line from a tiny piece of interactive fiction about a cosmonaut drifting alone. I wish I had made more of an effort to remember. I wish I had taken more photos. Not because the photos would last forever, because they mattered now, because the moment of taking them, of choosing to see something and say this is worth keeping, that act of attention is its own kind of permanence. I started this video with a question. If you could only save 116 images as the final record of Earth, what would you choose? I've been thinking about that differently lately. Maybe the question isn't which moments are worth preserving. Maybe the question is, which moments are you paying enough attention to that you'd notice them? The Voyager probes are out there right now, moving at about 17 kilometers per second, carrying a song about flowers through a void that has never seen a flower. That is terrifying, and it is beautiful. And I don't think you can have one without the other. Space scares me because it is real, because the emptiness is real, because our smallness is real. But smallness isn't the same as insignificance. A pale blue dot is still a dot. The trajectory might be unchanging. I am still going to water the plants. If this hit differently than you expected, that is kind of the point. Drop in the comments, what would your image be on the golden record? I am genuinely curious. I'll read every single one. If this made you feel something, like and subscribe. Next video, we're going somewhere equally uncomfortable. See you there.